Remember that Moses and the Hebrew enslavement in Egypt is actual history and not a fable. When the account was written in 1500 BC of what God instructed Moses to do, there was no reason for the writer to comprehend the significance of the instructions in light of what the Messiah would go through 1500 years later. But the symbolism and practice begun at the first Passover when God spared the firstborn male Hebrew children while allowing the Egyptian firstborns to die, stands as powerful evidence of us being contacted from beyond our dimension of time. It also confirms the plan established before the beginning of time that God himself would suffer and die in order for the second death, eternal death, to pass over us and allow us to live in an afterlife in an entirely new space-time dimension. In Exodus chapter 12, the Lord instructs Moses how to remember the Passover with very significant ritual. On the 10th day of the first month of the year, a lamb or goat without blemish was to be selected, and on the 14th day it was to be sacrificed, and the next day was to be a special Sabbath. None of the lamb's bones were to be broken. 1,500 years later, on the 10th day of the first month of that year, Jesus rode into Jerusalem. On the 14th day he was sacrificed. He needed to be taken down off the cross before sundown, as the next day was the special Sabbath, the Seder. For those still alive on the cross, their legs were broken so that they could not push up and take a breath. They would suffocate soon after. When they got to Jesus, he was already dead, likely due to the incredible beating he endured prior to being nailed to the cross. In addition to Moses declaring that the lamb's bones should not be broken, David in Psalm 34:20 may very well be referring to the righteous man Jesus, whose bones would not be broken. The others on the cross that day had their legs broken. Jesus did not. A deeper look into the first fruits offerings of the Seder may well represent the juxtaposition of the firstborn of God being offered for men. Also in Exodus 12, the instructions of the Hebrews was to slaughter the lamb at twilight on the 14th day and take some of the blood of the lamb and put it on the sides and top of the door frame. This would appear to symbolize the blood of the Messiah applied to the top and sides of the wooden cross in order to allow the second death to pass over those who put their faith in this act. There is another prophecy of the Messiah that he, the king, would ride into Jerusalem on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Recall that Melchizedek was the only person mentioned to be both a king and high priest. We have established that Jesus is Melchizedek, a member of the Godhead. In addition to being the high priest and king, Jesus the Messiah is also the Passover lamb. For years leading up to the time of the Messiah, tradition suggests that the high priest of the day, Caiaphas in Jesus' day, would go out to inspect the yearling lambs and then enter the gate to Jerusalem with the Passover lamb. People would line the streets and would wave and lay branches on the ground in honor of the entry of the high priest and Passover lamb. People would shout, Hosanna, which roughly means save us. The many people who made the pilgrimage to Jerusalem were likely unaware of what was about to happen. As the crowds began shouting Hosanna and waving and laying branches in celebration of the Passover and Caiaphas bringing the Passover lamb, God's high priest and Passover lamb, Jesus, rode into Jerusalem on the foal of a donkey, also as their king, to fulfill 1,500 years of practice, symbolism, and prophecy. The Messiah had arrived 4 days before Passover, 4 days before he was to be slaughtered and apply his blood to the wooden cross. Paul instructs us that this grace in Christ Jesus was given to us before the beginning of time. 13.7 billion years after the Big Bang and beginning of our space-time dimension, the plan was being fulfilled before the eyes of those gathered that day in Jerusalem. Talk about planning an entrance. Jesus is real. Moses is real. Israel is real. And the plan is real. The plan transcends time. This story was not made up after the death of Christ. It was shared with humanity 1,500 years earlier, and it was recorded in the Tanakh centuries before the event occurred. This is the plan and the path to the afterlife. It is precise, like life itself and the universe itself. No fairy tale. Just an awe-inspiring, loving God doing his thing for us.